follow the method.
Oh, sorry.
So this. I'm speaking. So how do I?
That screen's gonna go black. I don't think.
I would never.
All you'll need to do is push this button right here, and it'll start recording again.
Your phone's probably gonna
Got it?
this or whatever.
Oh wait, he's gonna get, yeah, because you post or you can. All you need to do is when the screen goes black, just push this button right here.
The big one?
Yeah, sorry.
Great, that's what I'll do.
Cool. Tap me. I'm a multi-sleep deficit, so just tap me if you see it and I don't do anything.
I saw you talking to him and
That's fine. Look, I'll
Yeah, yeah, like I'm not. Yeah, so that's good.
This works, and then I guess when he calls you up, as soon as you step up there, just say record.
You're just closer than me, so I don't lost.
Oh, no worries, man.
Thank you, man.
I tried earlier, I'm not gonna lie. I'm
I thought maybe I could help you. Well, hello everyone, and first DRS custody conference. What? Shout out to everyone that made it happen. Amazing, really something. And here in Dayton, Ohio, just a couple of blocks away from here, is the original bicycle store of the Wright brothers. The Wright brothers started creating bicycles since they were young. They just wanted to sell bikes, and that's what they found their skill at. They never had any formal education. They didn't go to any fancy engineering school. And for what they were doing, I don't think they taught it in school. And just down the road is their original factory where they produced the first airplanes ever. And it all started with a dream. It was a fun outing with my brother, and we saw two people who were very long gone but had such a large impact on the world, and they did it by creating a design for something that changed everything, because it was hypothesized for so long that you could do this thing where a man could fly, a machine could lift itself into the air, but it was quite the feat to accomplish. And these two gentlemen who make bicycles just decided that that's what they wanted to focus on. And very early into their career, they wrote a letter to the Department of Agriculture and asked where they could go to test some of their ideas and their designs. They started making a glider, and I'm from North Carolina. That's what everyone thinks of the Wright brothers. You know, first in flight, they went out to the dunes. That was actually because the government agency said that that little kitty hawk part of North Carolina would be the best place to test out their guided design. So they took their dream, they took a lot of discipline and a lot of practice and a lot of design, and they went off to build. And it took years to create a wing that really worked. And they did it all from scratch. This is a photo of a model wind tunnel replica that they built in their bicycle shop, about this big, this wide, and they just started building a wind tunnel with absolutely no training. They pieced together, you can see little wings here. This is the body of a plane. And they just kept going at it, and if it didn't work, they tried again, they looked at how it worked, and they put a lot of effort into improving on the math, the existing material science, and of course the help that they had scouting out locations, testing things out. It took years of back and forth, an arduous train journey to North Carolina, back to here, testing things out, and eventually they succeeded, and they did something quite miraculous. And I think we're in a similar place. This was a long time ago when things just started, and it was just after the sneeze. I didn't even realize the significance back then. And what a significant problem this is all scoped out to be. 2/3, 3/4 sometimes, this is a big sample size, almost 200 studied from one of the large organizations. overvote. You can't even count the right number of shares in the company. I mean, it's unbelievable. And so I went on to work on this system for a long time, and there was a little bit of a difference in my approach than the Wright brothers. I never, some might remember the early patent application. It was not dissimilar from the Wright brothers patent, but they got the patent and I didn't, which I'm really happy for. It wasn't like something I intentionally planned, and I put a lot of effort into making it happen. And when the Wright brothers got their patent, they sort of stopped building for 20 years. They had this dream, and then they were from a small town area and wanted to create a livelihood and a living off of it. So they took what they had and they left it as it was, and it sort of stagnated. The whole industry sort of stagnated for 20 years because anyone that built something similar to their wing design just was met with a lawsuit from the Wright brothers. And they sold a couple of planes to militaries, but it really didn't grow that much. And that is just one of a plethora of challenges that got into my thinking over the years of how to really bring DRS mainstream and make it something that can solve this problem, because this is, in my view, it's a staggeringly large challenge. Some might remember an early presentation where I pitched the concept of a blockchain transfer agent and a new DRS system to just impromptu, non-specialized, but smart people, a panel of judges. And ever since those early days, I've always chosen the design, the mission, and the end goal over and above making the money or getting the rights, the exclusive use of some kind of technology, and just extracting as much profit as I can from it. In particular, when they asked me a question about if there were any competitors or any similar technologies, there was obviously there are ATSs, but to explain that to I had 3 minutes, and to explain the ATSs and the different levels of ownership and all the complexities of the custody and how everything gets managed, it's just a very complicated challenge. It's like trying to explain how the wind flows over the edge of a wing to someone who's never worked in dynamics. It's like, it's a really weird thing. And so I went for the more direct answer of there's nothing, knowing full well that would cost me 20, if not 25,000 in prize money to get a more accurate answer and a more accurate representation and public disclosure of the technology. And that's been my approach for a long time, is to take things slowly, to go smooth, and to build something that was done right and was able to be released. After that event, I was accepted into the Startup Accelerator program at Tech, which was a really big dream of mine, going to the school, and it was a big moment. This is the email letting me into the program. This is my initial reaction. I went up to the rooftop and shouted for some time, and then I skated on over to the main events building and just had a whole field day. And one of the aspects of that program is they had this office building downtown where you could set up your technology. And from the early days, I knew that this really needed to be decentralized and have more community oversight and governance system in place. I just had a hunch early on, and then that led to obviously the challenges of centralization, like putting everyone in one place and doing everything in a strict, confined environment that really wasn't conducive to everyone working open and permissionlessly. It didn't vibe, it wasn't right, and then the more I learned about the existing clearing systems today and how it just creates so many challenges because you can't see what's happening, because it's all in one place. It was another point in time where I decided to take the slower route, and there were plenty of great students on campus, some who I worked with after this, but to not go into that central environment, to not build things in a closed system, because the reality is that the vast majority of TAD3 is based on open source technology, and now, of course, as of last year, the whole thing is itself open source technology, and that's a choice that led to the avenues of funding, because, of course, this organization and the individuals around it, along with some groups around the Georgia Tech ecosystem, did try to invest and put money into the company early on. And I knew that any movement of the shares away from a community or a DAO was going to be really challenging. And so I took again the slower route to not take the money, to not hire the developers, and to just keep coding on things underground and work on it with the equity so that down the road it could find itself into the proper hands whenever we were able to figure out what those hands might be. So some of you might remember the 4 years. This is the last year I did it in. Oh, man, over the years it got from more and more understanding to more and more infuriating as I started to understand these challenges more. Without, naming names, there was a significant opportunity at the end of 23 going into 24 and onwards until I terminated it and disclosed that in the Discord, where there was a sizable institutional partnership opportunity with the big names on the structured finance side for asset-backed securities, which just are antithetical to a lot of the ethos and the principles of our community and of decentralization. And so yet again, I turned down a pretty major contract opportunity to work on the technology instead of the immediate profit. And lastly, that showed up in the way that I applied for funding in open source. So the blockchain community has a program that I've been working on since 22, and this is the application from 22, this is the application from 23, this is the application from 24. Each of these, I understood a lot more about how the community allocated capital. The first main one was the whole team submission through tech that was denied. The second one was just myself, was denied. And the third one was starting to integrate the community concepts, and again denied. On the merits that I specifically crafted those later pitches to identify structural weaknesses in the funding mechanism rather than to actually get funding. So while the first one was a bona fide nothingness, the rest really was intentionally exploring the boundaries and this is a couple dozen grand for some of these, and I decided to forfeit that money and to not achieve the results by putting in these applications that didn't really follow the quotas and the guidelines so I could explore the boundaries of what was possible. And that really manifested in, of course, the 25 one, where I posted a tweet that cost me $9,000 or conservatively $7,500 in grant money by directly going against what was the leader of the review board for that $1,000 grant that we received. That was a matter of discussion for some of the early donation preparation at the beginning of last year. And the reason I did it was because it needed to get alignment and sustainability more than I needed 10 grand. The systems here, it matters more that they're done properly than that they're done quickly. And so for a very long time, I've said no to speed and to profits, to focus on scalability, properness, and alignment. And this has led to great work that will mature this year. I'm excited for it. And it's coalesced into, I ran out of time to build the presentation. These were just some images that I had, and I decided that they would be on the background here as I describe my new mentality, because after the SEC's examination last year, I'm very happy with the position that we have. It's just an extremely strong regulator acceptance. We just heard about how they are really tackling these problems for the first time ever. This might be the year where we finally have the chance to really revamp the transfer agent regulatory infrastructure. And that is why now the mantra for me is that flawless is acceptable. Because one thing I realized over these years with our first client is that even slow can have mistakes. And I think we know that too with the central firms. They go slow, but they still make mistakes. And so the step forward here is to really get things automated, systemized, and flawless. so that everything is exactly right, because there's just no excuse for more shares out there than exist for things not going properly. And so a while ago, some of you might remember, this was presented 2 years ago in the smaller Jimmy group, and it's this big complicated governance structure, I imagine, for overcoming the syndicate. And the great news is that we have made it past the chasm, so to speak. We are done with this starting prep and proving things out, and the system is live, it's been proven, it's been overseen, and it's really ready for the next stage to execute the vision of so many years ago. It's been a very long amount of just complete dedication to build this, and we did it without outside capital, we did it without corruptive funding, and we did it as a community. We did it together. I remember in the depths of the review, there were some people in this room that, bless their hearts, came in, and we submitted that response letter at 11:50 at night when it was midnight. It was quite the weekend, and I just am so thankful for the community. At the start of this talk, I put a poll in the votes panel, submitted a DUNA proposal to donate all of the shares, or to move all of the shares over to the association. So I now propose to get rid of all this complexity and just make it a simple, direct block transfer, owned, controlled by WhyDRS. I've done 3 steps to prepare for this at the start of this year. The first was moving that initial grant money over to the syndicate's bank account. We had $8 in cash at the end of last year, and needed to cover routine expenses, registration. We also did some of the agent materials for the DUNA. And so by moving the shares, it's effectively the same thing, but it just gives us that operating capital. And of course, all the financials are public on that and will be available for review with the vote. And I've deprecated our beta client relationship. They were terminated, removed, and off the original platform. They've been doing well, took it well. It was based still on manual human involvement and going back and forth with a person. And that is just not the kind of direct scalable system that we really need here. It was perfect for proving it, and now it's time to really take it to the next level. And for a long time, I thought that the syndicate had to do all of this on its own. And so it was block transfer, 2 words, full logo, based on the investment banks. But these last couple of years, discovering the community, working together, has really showed me that we can do it together. It doesn't have to be all completely lonely. And that's been something that I really appreciate. And I remember the first episode of Taking Stock we had together, there was a little, it was smushed together, and for a long time, it was referred to as one word, in colloquially. And I think that that's just a perfect representation of what we've done here and will do with the migration of the shares. So I've made it one word, and there it's the slogan. It's together, it's cohesive, and it's not the whole thing anymore. It is intended to be a layer of ownership that is controlled by the community, that operates its strict market utility function, and does so for the benefit of all market participants and to the accountability of us as association members. And then I've also removed distractions by simplifying my personal life to focus on the project. So Chais has helped work on this since the start. It was 2 weeks before that that smorgasbord presentation that we were going back and forth on this, and there were some preliminary ideas about donating the shares, and I was like, oh, let's just do it now. And here we are 2 years later with the systems and structures actually in place to make it happen. So would you please come on up, Chais? And this is a little guy that was given out in the early 2000s by Thinkorswim, one of the greatest trading platforms ever. Lately it was acquired and it's changed corporate hands. But for me it shows that this community has always been here and is only growing. And I believe that we can do more together than we can do just isolated alone. This was my life for a very long time. And I'm excited to bring the markets to more people by working on things together. So donate the shares to the DUNA and take questions on it. Chives has been working on this for a while with me, so also voicing questions. And the vote is live as of the start of this talk on the Discord.
Wow. Wow. Okay, amazing. So I did not know, let me just preface, that John was going to be setting up the vote to happen today or coincide with this event. My heart's full of bursting, you guys. Ever since I learned about John's work and wrapped my head around it, which was not immediate at all, I felt that it was the solution. I felt that it was the way that we could solve this problem, this incredible, crazy problem that we heard myself dance around earlier, Dr. Lawson talk about for an hour. Of course, John touched on it. If you're listening or watching to this, I mean, you have probably some working understanding of what the issues are, but these are complicated issues. Oh, and John, you've done an incredible job, and it's been a pleasure these last few years having you in this community. I think you wanted for people to ask questions, so do people have questions? People know what John is working on and how monumental this is? Everyone's speechless. They're all struck.
Well, while they come up with words, I will comment a little more. There's a lot more economic primitives behind this that perhaps I'll get into with the annual syndicate meeting. But it's better, I think, to this came up with open sourcing everything. This is all based on all these open standards, and I really would like to keep it that way because I just want the most efficient system possible here. And if we can remove the extractive middlemen, then we can just have a market that works for the purpose of being a market, which is such a crucial piece of infrastructure. Trillions was floated around earlier, and that's no small understatement of the size here. And we're a group that really, we have the foundations to make this happen. The people that built the existing system are no smarter than we are. Together, we can do this together. On the nonprofit side, I'll give it back to you.
So on the nonprofit side, and stop me anytime if people wanted to hop in, but I think one of the most crucial things that years ago, when we were first talking about this concept, which was all John's idea about, donating any of these shares to be part of a broader collective and community resource, having it coached within a nonprofit structure is so crucial to actually solving the problems that we're talking about here. Why is it that the centralized machinations of the modern system have propagated to become so strong and so ubiquitous? It's because of their ability to rake in absolute tons of real value, represented value. Lawson alluded earlier that he felt those trillions that he'd mentioned were, to some degree, potentially some large degree, this is capital that should belong to people that are participating in the market. And through things like transfer fees and just simple a lack of proper representation of actual market value, those monies are not actually being provided to regular people. So long story short, right? Nonprofit is important because this open source structure can be worked on by anybody, maintained by everybody, and is not motivated by any kind of profit. We are motivated by creating a reliable, consistent, accountable, transparent system of transactions and settlement for everyone to use everywhere. And that's what John has built, the structure and skeleton for that.
The structure and skeleton that I think only really works with a decentralized group of motivated investors like us to oversee it. Because, well, we've seen the challenges of having 10 people that control everything. And I don't know any smart group of individuals to really make this a reality. It just seems like the right thing to do on so many levels. So
what does Block block transfer do exactly?
It's a SEC registered transfer agent built on blockchain using the distributed ledger as the actual list of stockholders. So the wallet with the assets is the stock for the company. So the company hires, the transfer agent acts as an operating transfer agent, and it just has the economic ownership and governance benefits upheated to the DUNA.
So some qualifiers that I just want to, or some additional descriptions that, I've been looking to explain John's work to folks for years now, and so some of the key things that I want to add on to that are first that self-custody can exist directly in this way. So you can have control of the private key that the assets are stored, represented within on the blockchain. So that's a key thing to understand. In compliance with Know Your Customer regulations, it is still important that the transfer agent has a hand in confirming peer-to-peer movements of those things, but that's just for regulation's sake. Essentially all that means is that when the buyer and seller have to have some amount of information held with the transfer agent, just like you do today when you hold directly on the stock ledger. But crucially, right, this allows for peer-to-peer transaction, and John can get more onto that, how native open order book. I just want to also bring up tokenization. That's a buzzword that gets an absolute ton of attention these days, and more and more and more as the weeks seem to be going by. But this is not tokenization. A token minted on chain represents an asset that is not on chain. What John is talking about, as he said, the shares are on chain. That is what is considered the definitional resource for ownership. The ledger is on the chain, and so it is not the same thing as tokenization as purported and touted by so many industry professionals and advocates today. So that's a crucial distinction. John, I hand it back to you to expand on either of these points.
Yeah, one of the main innovations was the separation of the operating transfer agent from the actual TAT3 protocol that defines the standards and structures for the movement of the stocks. That was really formalized and separated last year at the behest of some of the fundraising documentation work and then the commission review. And over time, it'll be seen as to how many other agents come in and use the framework and compete in the open market for like fees and other services, related services. And over time, that might mature into the protocol governance layer of the TAT at the syndicate level, and then further subsidiaries down the line doing the operating transfer agents. And that seems like a good way to do it. It'll be on the behest of the market as to how many people want to compete and do with that. As it stands right now, the envision process is to just operate the TA as it stands like it's a nonprofit, and flesh out the system more to the point where it does trading full time. Like once we have really significant trading volumes and start dragging the volume on chain away from the CDs, then that's probably when something like that might get a little bit more formal. I see LRF, please.
So what benefits do issuers get by choosing block transfer over another transfer agent? Yeah,
so block transfer versus the others, the main pitch for the longest time was that it's cheaper because you can, it's silly, but the other ones, of course, are still using medallions, which is that physical stamp, the paperwork, the bank process. And it's accounting, so accounting on the traditional side, it's a lot of margin built in to build trust through higher rates. And they're very large bureaucracies that have very manual processes. So the immediate big selling is that it's cheaper, but of course the real secret here, and the when you talk to CFOs, like sure it's cheaper, whatever. It's like they don't really care about the transfer agent bill; they care about their underwriter's fee because that's real money. And of course, when you have markets on chain, there are no underwriter fees. You just sell the stock to the investors. That's a big difference because now you've got really a direct market. And the other one is that there are companies out there that I've talked to the CFOs and they understand that they are getting the rear end when it comes to street name ownership reconciliation. And they want a new system. They want a real market that is it's a free market framework. They do so with the right investor protections, because there is still a fair amount of operational work that can be messed up from like moving over old legacy shares onto the system.
So I do have maybe a little bit of a hard question. Have you envisioned any ways that less values aligned agents could take the great protocol with all the wonderful values you've built and turn it into something that we don't actually intend it to be?
The biggest threat in my mind is there's a style of tokenization that I was pitched on by the big investment banking opportunity that I turned down from the structured finance side of the world. That was 2.5 years ago. A year and a half ago, I posted in the Discord, that became an endorsed de facto standard from the clearing agency, and it is by and large what everyone is promoting as the new way to tokenize. And the way that it works, basically you can only send between each other, and so if you want to trade, you can't use a DEX, you have to go through an ATM, you have to go through a central exchange, and they charge you trading fees. And that's the biggest threat. The way that I see you solve that is by forcing participation in the DUNA, sort of like how the brokers are forced to participate in FINRA, which because then you can have the DUNA go in and enforce on accounts, okay, this is an ATS, this is an off-exchange order book, and we're not going to allow that. The fact is that as soon as you introduce even just a duopoly of exchanges, you increase spreads. There's a paper on this, Wooten.link/duopoly, by 22%. And it only gets worse as you fragment, especially for lower volume, lower size securities. It needs a unified DEX. That's the whole point of the entire thing. And you just ban accounts, you freeze accounts. The agent can freeze accounts, the agent can control accounts for like sanctions. And so you just set up the core protocol needs the rules for single execution on the DEX, and I've worked on that for 3 years, documenting that properly. That's the biggest thing, because if you have a DEX, like if everything's on the DEX, I don't really care what else you do. You know, you can't really mess up markets if you have the right market. Do you want to add anything to that, or should we go to LRF?
I will add briefly that I think it's an excellent question that Kirk had asked about their dual influences, and when I steel myself about the approach concerning that, I also think about just simply it's a better service for most people to be able to openly trade and trade without fees and have complete confidence in settlement and be able to see everything about the process. And while that won't apply to everyone, people can still, they could create a derivative and trade on an ATS outside of this system if they want to, and we wouldn't have anything to do with that. So, if anyone is thinking about what John said about trying to impose or imposing any kind of controls over the user ability, I would say to think about it in that kind of framework. Folks, it's not as if folks have no other options. They have all the options in the world. It's really more about creating something that works well in the thing that it does, and will be best in class in this niche, and it will be ever improving thanks to the open source and community-based nature of it. That's my perspective there. And yes.
Yeah, because we as one transfer agent, I don't think can really build the best system. It is going to help from everybody using the same framework, whether it's for different agents, whether it's through the community implementing it, or more eyes on it, because it should just be the best system. It's not about the one agent.
Yeah, so a bunch of different agents using the same protocol, does that mean that there is one sort of unified chain, so that even if you can have a single interface and be trading all sorts of different companies, even if they're using a different TAD3 based transfer agent to release those tokens and manage that ledger?
Yeah, the TAD3 system is a layer of protocols on top of Stellar.
On Stellar.
And so it's all interoperable. You can trade the other Stellar assets and their front ends for it.
Cool. So I do have at least one more follow-up question. I can imagine a lot of, sorry, it's a thread, right?
Hey, let's do it.
I can imagine there's a number of companies, like publicly traded companies right now that might be interested in that. Like Genius Group has been making some of the most noise about DRS. You might, there's companies like that you can get in with. I'm curious about this in terms of like, almost like local stock exchanges. Can this be utilized by, say, a local company? They don't want to be listed on the NASDAQ or the NYSE, but they do want to allow at least locals, but really arbitrarily anyone who wants to own a piece of their business and trade a piece of their business. Could they contract with you to create their equity on chain and trade through this platform?
Yeah, it's the same exchange from the smallest business to the biggest Fortune company, and the same operating principles, fees, systems. It's all on the Stellar Dex. So it 100%, yeah. Down the line, some of my what I'm excited about is letting the issuers do it themselves and self-host as agent. That's been something since the start. It's got a lot of interest things that need to be worked out, and but whether it's a service provider doing it, the issuer doing it, or one of the agents doing it, 100%. There's no reason that after a holding period, an investor of sufficient means can't put a bid offer on the shares of their little local exchange company. Even if there's only 25 people in it, and somebody wants to sell, someone wants to buy, that's a market.
Yep.
Give it to them.
Cool.
LRF, please.
So how will existing brokers interact with block transfer alongside existing financial infrastructure?
So it's a lot like how there are apps today that let you hold crypto in a custodial system, because that's basically what the existing stock market is for the brokers. And the impetus will be on the brokers to provide a level of service above what we can build in an investor app, in a trading platform. It'll be a free market where, for the first time ever, the fact is, and Trimbath even writes this explicitly, the fact is that the transfer agents, if they build to TAD, this being the first one, they compete directly with Wall Street and the brokers. I don't like brokers. I like independent money managers. I like people managing their own portfolios or giving their money to smart allocators of capital. The fact is, and we're over time, so I will defer to others, but this is like the whole reason I started all of this was seeing the gaping inefficiencies in the asset management world. Because the fact is that if you know how to trade and to make a lot, and you can post funny memes on the threads, but to get real capital and to manage others' investments, it's a lot of social work. Like, I'm a pretty introverted guy, and it is not my happiest thing. Like, I love we're in this small group right here. If I was to walk outside and everyone in that area was a billionaire, I would absolutely dread pitching each and every one of them on why I'm a great allocator of capital and have a 6-year investment track record and all this stuff. And you can see these things on like PDFs but it's the allocation of capital is completely separated from how good you are at trading. And so unfortunately what that means is that the best traders, they just trade for themselves because they don't, like Burry, perfect example, made a ton of money doing it for others, and he's like, oh my god, doing it for others sucks. Now he just does his own money. And I've done both. For years and years I've done both. And it's a night and day difference dealing with the managing other people's portfolios and dealing with their responses and the things that they want. And it's too social, and it needs to be systemized. And that's what something like this does, because when the trades are on chain, you can see the performance history. And I'm going to talk about this for way too long because I care too much. But the point, I don't like how brokers do advising. You pay a guy 1% a year, and literally they look at you like you're a money machine that just prints out a dividend to them, and a lot of times they just put you in like a stock bond portfolio split between index funds. I mean, it's like pathetic. It's really pathetic. And if anybody actually, trades professionally for any amount of time, you realize just how minuscule the average returns are that they sell. And it's extremely disappointing, because the only ones that have access to the managers that decide they're going to put up with all the bogus are the ones that go and they launch these funds and they get billions and billions in assets under management. And at a certain point, you get diminishing returns. So you'll, instead of having a great fund manager do 180%, you'll have a great fund manager with 10 times the size doing 1/10 the returns. And he makes way more money because of 2 and 20, but it's not a good outcome. It's a centralization of capital that happens because there's only some people that are good at trading that are willing to put up with everybody's money management. And so in a perfect world, the financial advisors that aren't doing anything, there becomes a real market. Right now there's not really a real market to compete with them because of all of the licensing and registration, and particularly the trust challenge of allocating capital. It's just very challenging for me to express to you that I'm good at trading. Like, here's a PDF that I definitely promised did not change. And it's a whole process to, so the question was probably about trade execution, which is just, you're removing 11 intermediaries and you're just doing it yourself. So it's going to be cheaper, it's going to be faster, and it's going to be more efficient. But I care a lot about the asset management side of things, because when you give people the tools to trade, oh my gosh, you let them trade and they can, you can see and you can allocate the funds where they're going to have great returns. And great returns change lives. They really do. You're giving people savings and retirements when their life compounds at 16% instead of 8%. That is millions of dollars in their older years. That is entire livelihoods that exist because of a more efficient allocation of capital. And that doesn't just help the investors, that helps the economy, the companies, the employees. Everyone wins. Chad, do you have anything on the brokers?
Well, sure. I just always appreciate John's passion when it comes to the nitty-gritty here. It is an incredible system, the one that we currently utilize. And I think to go back to Last Resort Friend's question, just how will the brokers continue to exist after this implementation, or how will that whole part of the world keep working? At first, nothing will change. At first, nothing changes at all. The centralized paradigm at CD&Co and DTC continues on, and what will only change is as different public companies opt to switch their transfer agent to one that utilizes the TAD3 protocol, then very slowly you will have a exodus over what may be years or decades or months. I don't know. We'll find out, right? But I think that it's an incredible opportunity that many of them will recognize, as they already have to anecdotal claim, or they will in the future as these things permeate themselves and become more clear. But crucially, as that transition occurs, there will become a more, and to John's point about self-management, the data itself will become democratized and more transparent. The settlement itself, the movements themselves. If we started to have larger funds operating on this kind of platform to get away from fees and intermediaries to operate more efficiently, that means that they're essentially signing off on publicizing their algorithms and preferences in a way, because we'll be able to see, everyone would see how these things are moving around. And that egalitarian access to information, as it develops, will raise the floor of access, availability, and success for everyday investors who will, I think, to wrap things back, the idea of ownership, we're talking not just about owning your assets or owning the decision-making process of trade, but owning your future and creating a better, more sustainable future for yourself and your family through this more transparent and egalitarian protocol. So those are great questions. Thank you again, John. I know that, again, we are over time, and hopefully, but whatever, is it? Okay, are we good?
Are there more questions, Alex? Any more?
Yes, no? Any closing thoughts? You're good?
I'll answer more on the proposal questions in the chat or in writing going forward, so we have a paper trail, and we're all on the same page for everything that happens here, because it's a responsibility. Governing any of this, it's a big project, and it's something that I think we're uniquely capable of doing. And let's set an example for what good governance of public infrastructure can look like.
When it's possible. I want to talk about it.
Yeah, let's do it.
I didn't want to.
Thank you.